All right, guys, today we're talking about graphing piecewise defined functions. So before we start, let's go ahead and talk about what a piecewise defined function is. It is a function represented by a combination of equations, each corresponding to a part of the domain. So let's look at this. I've kind of set it up so that we can kind of see what each part is. So right here, this is the name of the function. Sometimes it'll be f of x, g of x, h of x, something like that, okay? You do have this single brace. That's all it is. And then these guys right here are your functions. These guys right here are your restrictions. Okay, so it only wants the x's that are less than or equal to 0. It only wants the x's that are greater than 0 for this one. These kind of are called, sometimes you will hear it called the breaking point. Sometimes I will call it the starting point because that's what we're going to start our T-charts with, these points right here. Okay, so remember we are doing inequalities, so we have to remember that when we have a less than or a greater than, that is an open circle. Or let's say open circle, open. And if we have a less than or equal to and a greater than or equal to, remember that is your closed circle. Oh, you can't see that. Let me scoot that a smidge over. Okay? All right, so before we start graphing, let's talk about evaluating. So when we evaluate these piecewise functions, what we do is we look at the domain. So right here is f of x, our function. You see how the x is in the little parentheses? Then all of a sudden it puts a negative 2 in the parentheses. All it wants you to do is to replace that x with negative 2. It's kind of like substituting it in. That's all it is. But here's the thing. That negative 2 only fits into one of the functions. Okay? So you have to look at these restrictions and see where it fits in. So negative 2. So is negative 2 less than or equal to 0? Or is it between 0 and 5? So which one is it? Is it less than or equal to 0, or is it between 0 and 5? Where does this negative 2 fit in? Yes, it fits into the first one. So we are going to plug it into the first one. We have a negative sign. Then we have our negative 2 plus 4. Okay? So negative and negative makes that positive, so that is a 6. So don't forget that. If that negative is on the outside, you have that negative on the outside. Then plug in your thing. All right, so let's see what's going on here. I have a 0. Is 0 less than or equal to 0, or is it between 0 and 5? Now, here's the tricky part. Look here. Does this have the little underline? No. So it does not include this 0. What this one includes doesn't include the 0, but it includes the 1, 2, 3, 4. Does it include the 5? Yeah, because look, it has a little underline under it. It includes the 5. So which does the 0 fall into? Does it fall into the top or the bottom? Yeah, the top again, okay, because it has a little underline. So we'll have negative 0, which does not work. So 0 plus 4, which is what? 4. Yay. Okay, so when you're evaluating, you got to make sure you look at the restriction to see which one you're going to plug it in. Okay, the next one is 5. So which one does this 5 fit into it? Is 5 less than or equal to 0? Or is 5 one of these numbers we figured out? Yeah, it's one of these numbers. So that's where we're going to plug it into this function. So let me scoot it over a little bit so you can see me right. So 2/3 times 5 minus 1. I think I'm going to use my calculator. So 2/3 times 5 minus 1. Now your calculator does this. Ooh, so ugly. So I'm going to push math and then frac. 7/3 is your answer. Okay, so again, when you evaluate, you look at the restrictions to see where that x falls in the domain, and then that is the equation that you plug it in at. Pretty simple, right? All right, let's look at now the graphs. The graphs are easy too. Okay, so what you do is we make a T-chart for each one. You see these guys right here? Remember, this is our breaking point, our starting point of our T-chart. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'm going to make a T-chart. And you start with this -1. That's your first point. Now it says you want the x's that are less than -1. Less than. So less than -1 is -2 and -3. I only need 3 dots, you guys. Like, I'm totally fine with just 3. So just follow what your restriction is. So again, I start with the number, -1, and then I see what it wants. It wants all the numbers less than. So less than is -2 and -3. Now I'm going to take these x's and I'm going to plug them right into this equation. So I'm going to take my calculator and I'll even put it here so you guys can see me kind of plug it in. So I'm plugging in -1 first. So -2 times the -1 minus 2. So I get 0 for the first one. Okay, now let's plug in the -2. So -2 times -2 minus 2. I get 2 for that one. It's hard to write. My calculator's kind of in the way. All right, now let's go a little -3. And I get 4. And then this is the piece of the graph that we graph down here. Now, this is the starting point. So over -1 up 0. But you got to look right here. See how this doesn't have the little line under it, the equals? Then this means from at the top of your paper that we are going to have an open circle there because it doesn't include the -1. So I have an open circle right there. Then it goes to -2, 2, then -3, 4. Biggest thing is in my classes is they don't know where the arrow goes. Remember, the first point, that's your starting point. So there shouldn't be any arrows on your starting point. The arrows continue on with these points. So there is your arrow. Okay? Now, let me switch colors so we can do the other side. I think I will put it over here. So X and Y, who's your starting point? Yep, -1 again. And it says I want the numbers greater than or equal to -1. So greater than 0 and 1. Okay? And then again, I'm just going to plug them in. This one's a little bit easier, so I can do it in my brain. -1 plus 3. 0 plus 3. And 1 plus 3. Now, when I go to graph this, is this an open circle or a closed circle? Look at your inequality. It's got that little line underneath. So what do you think? What did it say up here? Little line underneath means closed circle. So over -1 up 2, closed circle. Over 0 up 3, over 1 up 4. Now remember, this is your starting point. So, this is your starting point. So no arrow over here. Boom. See, it's not that bad. If you just use the little T-charts, we're all getting A's. Okay? All right, let's try again. Let me switch pens. First one, who's your starting point? Yes, this time it's a 0. Your starting point might change with each graph. Starting point is 0. See how this is 0 right here? And then it says I want less than 0. So -1 and -2. Now, I think we can do this in our brain. 0 plus 2, -1 plus 2, -2 plus 2. All right, so remember, this first is the starting point, and there's no underline. So is this going to be an open or closed? Open, good. Then -1, 1, -2, 0. So remember, start at that open circle, and your arrow will go the other way. All right, let me switch markers. Again, your starting point is the same, or that 0. But then let's look what this one says. It says I want greater than or equal to 0. So I want the greater than numbers. So 1 and 2. Now I think we can do this one in our head too. 2 times 0 is 0 minus 1. 2 times 1, 2 minus 1. 2 times 2 is 4 minus 1. All right, is this going to be opened or closed? Look at your inequality. Closed. So 0, -1, closed. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So again, start at the starting point and go up with your line. And there it is. All right, practice some of those practice problems.